Hey there, guys and gals, it's Daniel here from the GeekSpeakNation channel, and I'm here to bring you this new segment called Panel to Panel. So, along with my passion for video games and, movies and all those things and all this nerdy stuff, I love comic books, and I've been reading since about 2011, 2010 or so, really faithfully. And so, with a lot of things going on in comic books right now, specifically with DC comic books, I wanted to get into reviewing them and talking about them with you guys and see what you guys think and see if there's anybody else who's getting into comic books and can give me some reading recommendations or need reading recommendations and things of that nature. So I'm going to primarily start off this series by just focusing on comic books with DC and specifically Batman and Superman. I mean, they're the most popular, they're the most read when it comes to DC, and I just particularly like reading those, and I'm excited to talk about what's going on in those comic books. So before we begin, I just want to say that I want to explain my rating system that's going to be going on. If you guys are familiar with Jason Inman from DC All Access, he had his own rating system back when he reviewed comic books, and I'm going to adapt that and apply it to over here. So the three levels that we have going on for recommending a comic book is buy it, borrow it, or skip it. Meaning, should you buy it full price? Yeah, you should. It's really worth reading as soon as possible. Go get it. Borrow it, which means you can take your time. It's worth reading, but not worth buying. Get it from a friend. And then skip it altogether. Guys, don't waste your time on this comic book. So that's going to be my levels for it. And like I said, I'm just going to be starting off with introducing some small books, or a few series for now. Just keep it cheap and just see how it goes and see what people think of it, of me reviewing comic books. So now that all that's out of the way, we're going to be talking about what we're going to be reviewing today. So first we're going to have DC Universe Rebirth #1, then Batman Rebirth #1, then Superman Rebirth #1, then we're going to go over to Detective Comics number 934, and then Action Comics number 957. Yeah. Hope I got those numbers right. So I have to start off with DC Rebirth #1. That is written by Geoff Johns, the Chief Creative Officer over at DC Comic Books, with art by a bunch of people. Gary Frank, Phil Jemenez? Someone spell check me on that one. And then Ethan Van Sciver. And so essentially what this book does is states a promise for all DC fans, because in 2011, I believe it was around then, is when DC had their big reboot of continuity called New 52. Stories became darker and grittier, and we got some really great stories out of it, but at the same time we lost a lot of readers for DC Comics because New 52 basically said anything that happened before this isn't valid, and they're going to try to weave in elements from the previous continuity, but most of it didn't make it in the 5-year run that New 52 had. So with that, they decided they wanted to try to bring back these readers, and so they came out with DC Universe Rebirth. Reboot. It's not really a reboot, which is one of the things I got away from reading this comic book. I have to say that more so, this is a book about stating a promise, and that readers are going to get what's been missing so much in DC comic books, and that's been legacy and just love and that team aspect and heroes just being heroes. I think that was the tagline that they had on their marketing campaign. But essentially they recognized that their stories got way too dark and that their stories were lacking hope, which really set DC so differently from all the other comic book publishers and really exemplified our heroes as, well, heroes, and really exemplified these characters that we've known and loved as testaments to what humans can be and what we're capable of. And so in this 80-page, and it's a thick 80-page comic book, we get that, and we get elements that are introduced that are going to be setting up story points for all these different characters throughout the DC universe, and introducing and bringing back things such as love and legacy into the DC universe again. And I think the prime example of this is that they bring back Wally West, Kid Flash back into continuity. And that was a big thing for me. I was a big fan of Wally West from watching the cartoons, and so that bled into my real appreciation for him as the Flash character and as a character in general. So bringing him back in this book was really, really awesome, and I'm glad they did it. And I have to say that that action alone, along with other ones, are a big testament to what they're really trying to do and what they're really trying to go for. And the things they address in this book are really great for old comic book readers and new comic book readers trying to come in and appreciate what's about to happen with DC Comics. So guys, the writing is phenomenal and it's easy to grasp, although it's a little confusing at first because there's so much going on. But Geoff Johns is able to take a really big concept and bring it down and pack it down into a way that's accessible for all readers. And the art is phenomenal as well by the 3 artists on board. So guys, I'm going to have to give DC Universe Rebirth #1, which is a one-shot, so don't go looking for #2. I'm going to have to give it a buy it, guys. It's really worth reading and it's really worth your time. And it's a great starting off point for what this new DC Universe is going to be for comic book readers. So, continuing on that trend, up next we have Batman. I think there's a point. That's the direction the graphic should be. Anyways, we have Batman #1, written by Tom King and Scott Snyder, with art by Mikel Janin. I believe I pronounced that right. I'm working on these guys. Give me a few times. I'll get it together. But essentially, Scott Snyder, as I listed before in the writing credits, is the writer for Batman for the last 5 years, and he's giving the reins to this new upcoming hot writer, Tom King. Everybody's loving him. He's great. I think he's really great, and I was excited that he was going to be taking up the reins if anybody was going to follow up the amazing job that Scott Snyder did for 5 years writing Batman. If you haven't read any of his runs, I highly recommend it, and I'll be probably doing separate videos on all of his arcs because it's amazing. Anyways, so in this book, the main focus is on the elements that are introduced in DC Universe Rebirth, which are creating legacy and creating trust and heroes being heroes again. And so we find that happening with Batman and him trusting a new apprentice and trying to build something new with a new apprentice by the name of Duke Thomas, a character that's introduced previously in DC Comics continuity in the past few years. And I have to say that it's really awesome to see Batman like this again. I think the way that Tom King is approaching writing Batman is him analyzing all the legacy that he's had and having him trying to stand for it again, yet at the same time trying to find something new to stand for and try to find something new to invigorate the people that he protects and try to find a new way to do the things that he's been doing for so long. I love Tom King's approach also as well, that it has kind of a horror vibe, and there's some imagery in this book that is pretty creepy. And shouts out to the artist Mikel, who actually favored one of my tweets on Twitter, which is awesome. Just the art is just really phenomenal and really just like popping. If you haven't seen his work on Grayson, you should look up that as well. Both of those, the writer and the artist. So I really do have to say that these two come together and make a really dynamic team, even though they're not going to be working on the bi-weekly book together, which is unfortunate. But I am really excited to see what Tom King's going to bring for Batman in the weeks to come and see what his arc plays out as. But I have to say that this book is definitely a great stepping stone for what's coming next. And the setup is really great, and having Calendar Man back as the villain is really awesome and really unorthodox, and is a villain we haven't seen in quite some time, but I think he's been brought back in popularity thanks to the Arkham games. So it's going to be really awesome to see what they do with him as a villain and what other character development we're going to see for Batman and him trying to defend his legacy, and also Duke Thomas having him come up as an apprentice and not being a Robin, which is going to be pretty fantastic. Yay, minority characters! We need more of you. We really do need more of you. So, with all that being said, I'm going to have to give Batman Rebirth #1 a buy it. Guys, it is definitely worth your time. And up next, we have Superman Rebirth #1 by writer Peter J. Tomasi and art by Doug Mahnke. So, now before I continue with talking about what I thought about this book, I'm going to have to say some spoilers from DC comic books going back a few weeks. And so essentially, Superman from the New 52 is dead, and due to prior events happening before the New 52, well, pre-New 52 Superman is back into continuity. Now, if that didn't make a lick of sense, yeah, I understand. That's perfectly fine. But it's really well explained in this book, which I have to give my hat off or beanie to Peter J. Tomasi, because, man, I love his writing, and I've loved his writing for quite some time now. I think he's very talented, and he has really good vision and understands so many of DC's characters and what makes them great as individuals. And to have him on Action Comics, he has a very streamlined approach to storytelling, and he makes things simple, but he doesn't dumb them down, and he writes with a lot of pathos and a lot of emotion, and that's really necessary for the story trying to be told in this book, because we have an older, wiser Superman who regrets not revealing his identity and coming back into the world because he was just trying to protect his family that got dragged into this new Earth. So I think it's really, really interesting what Peter J. Tomasi does and the emotional weight that is on throughout this book, but yet it's uplifting at the same time, and it gives you hope. And I think that's what Superman should be. And I think just the writing Peter has done for this book is just really exemplary of that, and something we've been desiring from comic books for a while now, especially dealing with Superman. It's just something to give us hope and something to give us that sense of there's something greater to be done. And I think Pete really captured that in this book. And guys, it's really worth your time. And I have to say that, yeah, you should also check out some of the stories that come before this. Definitely pick up DC Universe Rebirth, but also Superman number 52 and also Justice League 50 to give you some more context about New 52 Superman's death and the reemergence of this new, or the older Superman. Boy, does that sound confusing, but hey, that's comic books. So with that, I'm going to have to give Superman number 1 a buy it. Guys, this is a really, really phenomenal book and really gets you there in the heartstrings. It's really worth picking up at your local comic book shops and or online. Whichever one. Up next, we have Detective Comics number 934, written by James Tynion IV with art by... Eddy Barrows. So I was really, really excited for this book, almost more than any other book that was in DC's lineup, because James Tynion IV, it feels like I've been watching and growing with this guy as a writer for the last 5 years. When he was first introduced years ago to DC comic books, he was like the protege to Scott Snyder, and I would have been surprised if James Tynion ended up taking over Batman once Scott Snyder was done, but he didn't, and he moved on solo to Detective Comics to sharpen those teeth of his. And guys, James Tynion IV is such a great writer, and it's been so great getting to watch his work just expand and evolve over the course of these years. And I have to say that this book is probably my favorite that I've read so far out of the DC Rebirth lineup. Guys, this book is so good, and let me explain why. Because James Tynion has this approach of he wants to make a team-up book with some of these classic characters throughout Batman's history. So the team that Batman's putting together, it's going to be him, Batwoman, Orphan, aka Cassandra Cain, Batgirl, if you ain't know from other continuities. It's confusing. But she's Orphan, and she's amazing in this continuity, for those of you who've read Batman and Robin Eternal. And I also have to say, they have Clayface, Spoiler, and, oh my goodness, yeah, Tim Drake, Red Robin. So, yeah, I said Clayface, and he has a few panels in there that gets you emotional. It makes you want to cry. But, yeah, guys, man, this book is really awesome. And so essentially the story going on is that somebody has been surveilling superheroes and vigilantes in Gotham. And so Batman's like, yo, I gotta whip these kids into shape, because, hey, you know, they're going to come after him and they're not going to be ready. They're going to get taken down. And so he turns to Batwoman, who is, for those of you who don't know, in her background, has a military background. She understands what it's like to work as a unit and work as a team, which, to be honest, Batman doesn't really know how to do. And I think that was really, really awesome the way they played that up. And they give Batwoman such a great role because she is such a great and amazing character. And there's a lot to get interested in. And I just, man, love me some Katie Kane. She's really awesome. And they make a family connection in this book, which blew my mind, which was so obvious. But man, I loved this book, guys. You've got to pick up Detective Comics. It is really awesome. Plus the art is great. I mean, come on. Come on. But really, the thing you should be the reason you should be picking up this book the most is for James Tynion IV's writing. This guy knows how to do a team book. He knows how to write Batman characters. He knows what makes each individual character unique. And I just love that about his writing, guys. I'm just raving about this book. You've got to pick it up. Detective Comics, number 934. It's going to get a buy it from me. So, last but certainly not least, we have Action Comics number 957. This is written by Dan Jurgens and has art done by Patrick Zircher. So, this book is really interesting. So, playing off the concept that the new Superman is dead and the old Superman must come out of retirement and yet still protect his son and his wife is really, really interesting. And it's something I was really, really excited to see. But I do have to say I was a little disappointed with this book. All things considered, since I was really excited and really loved what was done with Peter J. Tomasi's DC Rebirth #1 book. So what makes this book a little strange is that Superman in this book is very gung-ho about becoming Superman again because Lex Luthor decides to claim himself as the protector of Metropolis. And so I enjoyed the concept, but things felt very rushed in this book. For older Superman who's taken so much time to be so methodical and to be so focused on making sure he's keeping his family safe and making the right decision, as soon as he sees Lex Luthor on television claiming to be the protector of Metropolis, I mean, he just sprints upstairs and he's like, oh, I gotta get rid of this beard and I gotta venomous suit. And there's just no conversation between him and his wife and his family that he has talked to for about a past year now about protecting his identity. So it felt very strange and very rushed, and I guess you could say it kind of speaks to the fact that, oh, Lex Luthor is that evil, and that Superman knows Lex that well to where he's like, no, nothing's good going to come out of this. I need to come back right now. I guess you could do that, and I guess they're trying to set up a lot in this book, like a lot, but it just didn't really work out, and the pacing felt a little rushed in the beginning and then kind of slows down in the middle once everyone starts meeting, and it just turns to a good old game of fisticuffs with no explanation. I'm like, great. Just great. And then we have the introduction of an old classic Dan Jurgens created villain. You can guess who it is if you've read comic books or seen Batman v Superman. Yeah. He's back. And so with that, it was kind of weird. It was kind of weird having that element being brought back in of a classic villain who doesn't really fit right now in continuity. And then also having a possible imposter Clark Kent and this element of there's two villains watching Clark. I don't know. It got very confusing and very muddled at the end and tried to do the good old like fashioned, surprise, this is a plot twist. And who is the real Superman and things like that. And it was like, whoa. It's very Death of Superman, like whole bunch of characters coming out the woodworks saying, I'm the real Superman now. And it's like, this is a little weird. This is a bit much, especially for a first issue. Let's take it down. Let's get the pacing back on track. So until they start, really developing the story and making sure that the writing's going to be cleaner for the next issue, I'm going to have to give this comic book a borrow it. What can I say? But I mean, that's not bad considering every single thing that I've listed before has been a buy it. I mean, DC is really hitting it out of the park with the books that they've been bringing up. And guys, I really recommend that you pick up these comic books, guys. It's really worth reading. Except Action Comics number it's good. It's still worth reading. But I don't know. But I do have to say, guys, I'm really also proud of DC for going with the initiative of having their books be released bi-weekly and having the cost of their books go down to $2.99, because it was insane having to pay like $5 for a new issue of Batman 1 month, like per month. And then each book was just, I'm like, it's the same length. Why am I paying like twice as much for what it should be? So it was ridiculous. But I'm so glad they're going with this model because, you know, DC is hurting a little bit in the financial department, but that's A-okay because we're still getting the great quality storytelling that we've been wanting. And, at a cheaper price. So I really recommend you pick up these books, guys, that I have recommended. And also let me know in the comment section down below what you think of these books, if you have read them or if you're gonna start reading comic books. And if you need some reading recommendations, let me know in the comment sections down below, guys. I'm trying something new. I love comics, as you can tell by my enthusiasm. So I'm really excited to be talking about them with you all. So let me know what you think of this segment, and I'm gonna keep doing them weekly. And hey, there's always some comics to read. There's going to be less comic books to read next week because, well, I had to catch up for 2 weeks worth this week of comic books that were being released. So, with that, yeah, guys, I really hope you enjoyed this. And, yeah, if you liked my reviews, while you're down there, hit that like button and also subscribe if you haven't to become a part of the Geek Nation, and tell your friends because, guys, we're on our way to 1,000 subscribers, and guys, we're almost there. So thank you all so much for all your support and supporting me in new endeavors just like this. As always, I've been Daniel. Read a comic book and don't forget to get geeky.